very good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone. Konnichiwa. My name is Rodrigo Araújo. I'll be the moderator of this session. It's a huge pleasure to be here with you. Before we start, I would like to pass the opening remarks to my colleague Gilberto, who is making these opening statements, and then we can proceed with this session. Okay.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo, and welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm actually speaking from Kyoto, Japan, where we're holding this Crime Congress in a hybrid format. And we are also quite happy to be here with you, especially because this Congress is very special. It's special because it is the first time that the Congress is actually considering education and youth engagement as one of its main discussion topics under one of its workshops. Welcoming you all to this event, I just wanted to say a few quick words from UNODC. First of all, implementing the 2030 agenda requires a whole of society approach. And we know that there are a number of targets and goals in the SDGs linked to the rule of law, especially those contained in SDG 16, but also in other SDGs, which is why we refer to it as SDG 16+. And a whole of society approach necessarily involves working with and for young people. And young people, when it comes to the rule of law, have largely been ignored as either potential victims or potential suspects or perpetrators. And our approach is to move beyond that. What we are trying to argue and what we want you to witness today is that young people can actually take the lead. They should be taking the lead in promoting the rule of law and making our communities safer, and as well as promoting human rights and participation. And today you will hear about a few different stories and from different people who have been working with us to make this happen. And I am lucky to have part of the Education for Justice initiative in UNODC, where we are implementing the outcomes of the previous Congress's declaration, which was the Doha Declaration. So after this 5-year cycle, we're very excited to show you a little bit of not only that it's possible, but we have to do it. Meaningful youth engagement to promote the rule of law should be the backbone of SDG 16+. And with this, and without further delays, I'm going to hand it over to Rodrigo, who is going to be moderating the session today. We were also supposed to have another moderator, Lisa, with us. We are still working to see if she can make her way to the platform. But in the meantime, I will hand it over to Rodrigo so that so that we don't delay this and we can move forward. So thank you very much and have a wonderful event.
Thank you very much, Gilberto, for these very enlightening opening remarks. Indeed, when we usually discuss the rule of law, we usually put young people in a two-phase scenario. They might be seen either as a very fanatic defenders of the rule of law, or for some of them, some institutions or some instances, they can also be seen as perpetrators, for instance. And for us, we need, of course, to see how crucial it is to put youth at the center stage overall promotion of rule of law as active agents of change in their communities, in the world in general. And of course, today is a day for celebrating young men and women there on the stage doing the right things and promoting the rule of law and changing their communities in their own way. So can I just share my screen a little bit, please? Just for us.
Yes, let me stop sharing real quick.
Okay. Just for me to show you who will be joining us today. We have 4 very inspiring young men and women from different countries who will be here sharing their experiences with us and telling us a little bit on how they have been promoting change and promoting the sustainable development goals in their communities, and naturally at the very end, the rule of law and crime prevention. Naturally, the very first one is that's it. Okay, Ira Beatriz Cardoso is from I'm from Brazil as well, and she is a pro-science activist and young researcher. And Ira is the co-founder and the deputy head and mentor of the Institute of Science and Technology called Leva Ciência since 2018, helping to transform the life of low-income children and young people through science. And she has taken research on environmental education and reuse of biomass waste. And Ira is also Latin American engineering by champion at the Brazilian International Science and Technological Fair. And from our end, in UNODC office in Brazil, Aira is one of our youth ambassadors. She's part of the youth ambassadors program. We also have today with us, let's see, Ramatullah Hamdard, our very good friend and a very active promoter of education for justice. He's a graduate student from Dunia University of Afghanistan, holding an MBA in public administration. He currently works for a free-to-run international organization aiming at empowering women through adventure sports in Afghanistan and Iraq. As part of his social work, Ramat has funded and currently manages Hope for Education and Leadership in Afghanistan organization, a youth-led organization that empowers youth through Model UN trainings and conferences throughout Afghanistan, raising awareness about UNODC mandates, building resilience among women in business, and fighting towards corruption in the public sectors in Afghanistan. Welcome, Ramat. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. We also have Maria Teresa Laurent. Maria Teresa is from the Philippines with a BA in communication with specialization in public relations. Through her tenacity, she received an award as the most outstanding student of the year 2018 and also became a recipient of the Philippine Student Quill Awards as an excellent awardee. And she's also here as a Youth Goodwill Ambassador from the SHIP for Southern Asian and Japanese Youth Program, which is a program that I'm a huge fan of it. And she's currently an elected public servant and youth sector and young entrepreneur. And lastly, but not at all less important, we have Kutsai Kuramatira, which I always struggle to pronounce his surname, which has his so beautiful picture with our Secretary General. Kutsai is from Zimbabwe, and he currently works for the UNODC Regional Office for East Africa Regional Youth Program. He has been engaged over the years in youth development programs in Eastern Africa, as well as larger international projects. And Kutsai was also the rapporteur of the high-level political planner at the ECOSOC for 2019, and he also moderated the UN and UN Youth Summit along with the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, that you can see in the picture right here. That is in the screen with you. So, as you can see, we have 4 very enlightening young men and women join us today, and I would like to start with a kickoff question, just for us to start talking about the power of youth engagement. And I invite, therefore, Ira and Maria to share their experience with us. Ira and Maria, in your opinion, what are the key challenges faced by young people today, especially those at risk or living in marginalized communities, to engage and to take actions towards the achievement of the SDGs? Ira, would you mind be the first one? Ira, we cannot listen to you. Maybe you are muted.
Now, can you hear me? Everyone can hear me?
Yes, perfect.
First of all, I would like to extend my compliments to all the panelists here and all the authorities and all the participants. And I'm so thankful for this opportunity. And answering the question from before, the key challenges are, I am from Amapá. I stay in the extreme north region of Brazil. My state is comprising 3% of the largest tropical forest on the planet, the Amazon, And in my region, the first challenge we face as young people is to find educational opportunities to learn and acquire the knowledge needed to promote the SDGs due to the geographic discrimination. And in the North region, the illiteracy rate is 7%. And another challenge is to translate the SDGs into an accessible language to reach all those young people and to reach all the young people in the most diverse social strata. Because we also know that education is among the most denied rights in the world. And the diverse voices of youth needed to be heard and needed to be acknowledged, because every day we are facing intense social barriers while we are trying to have a participation in political, economic, and also making decisions. And I think it's very, very important we have that space, because without that space, we are exposing ourselves to marginalization, violence, and crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ida. Thank you very much. Maria, please. Maria? Apparently, we are facing some technical difficulties in here. But meanwhile, Teresa and Maria Teresa is the same person, connects with us. Ida, what you just mentioned about accessibility of the SDGs is very interesting, because for those who could, yeah, you can hear you. Can you hear us now, Teresa? Nope. Okay, that's fine. She's facing some technical issues, but Ida, it was very interesting because we had the last week the youth forum to this Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Congress, and it was very interesting because the accessibility of the SDGs was one of the remarkable points during all the times that young representatives from all over the world were talking about. What we do know that young people are already at the forefront making the change in their communities, especially through education, for instance. But what has happened is that sometimes they don't really know what are the SDGs and what is going on and how this happens. And naturally, we need to work to have an accessible language for the SDGs that does not only in formal terms of what is the language of the SDGs, but how youth can interpret and translate them into real action. So that was actually very interesting for you to bring into the stage. Maria is trying to log out and get in. And meanwhile, I'd like to raise then another question. And I'd like to invite then Gilberto and Ramat to join us in the stage. Gilberto, if we now move the focus to the SDG 16, which stands for peace and strong institutions, what are the main challenges faced globally and locally to get youth engaged with crime prevention, and naturally how youth is affected in general in other communities by crime and violence? And I believe that Ramat from Afghanistan can also have a very interesting insight on that. Would you mind first, Gilberto?
I'm sorry, Rodrigo. I've been having a little bit of lag. Can you come again?
Yes, sorry, no worries at all. I raised a question for you and Ramat, and Kutsai as well. If Kutsai is willing to participate at this point, would be very welcomed. That if we move now the focus to SDG 16, what would be the main challenges faced globally and locally to get youth engaged with crime prevention, and how youth is naturally affected at the community level by crime and violence?
At the onset, the one thing I would like to point out is that we need to look at the challenges and potential participation avenues through a contextualized lens. What we see in one region or even within the same country might not be the same as another part of that country or another region. So I think that it's, first of all, trying to work to identify what some of the main challenges are. For example, in some countries, the threat of violent extremism is very real, whereas in others, gang violence is really what you see. And although they might look related in some ways, they are very different within their respective contexts. And the other thing is trying to find the avenues for participation to happen. So working with SDG 16 is also about participation itself. So we need to look at participation through both lenses. It's both a target under goals 10 and 16, but they are also avenues through which one can help accomplish other goals. And I think it's important to work with the relevant authorities and communities to find the right spaces, find avenues to create them if they don't exist, and within the scope, making sure that you get organized and that you work through concrete actions to tackle concrete issues. I think that this is also part of the biggest challenges, is trying to break out the different goals and targets into manageable chunks to which we can contribute.
Nice, Gilberto. Thank you very much for sharing this. Ramat, would you mind sharing with us some of your insights on that? Ramat? Okay, Ramat has connected
Can
as
someone
well.
please Rahmatullah Hamdard as a speaker? I don't know if Sarah, you can do that for us.
Yeah, he was here right away, but Kutsai, are you here?
Yeah, I can join in.
Okay, now I'm getting happy to see someone.
Okay.
So Kutsai, please.
Let me see if my lighting is better here. Hi, everyone. Hope you're well. Contributing to, thanks to Gilbert for his contributions first. I think he was pretty spot on, and I think what I can add to that is main challenges faced locally and globally by youth is education related to laws, policies, institutions, and accountability. And the reason I bring this up is because from the experiences we've had, working on the E4J project and promoting the rule of law, there's a lack of understanding about how certain institutions and policies function, especially those which provide social services and security, which results in youth often having a distrust for these institutions and feeling slightly disenfranchised. The best example I could give is when we had an event for Education for Justice, and this was focusing on the mandate area of anti-corruption. And during this event, we were assessing. We basically presented to the youth a package that had the Kenya 2016 Bribery Act, as well as presented the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to the youth. And one of the three questions posed was, should the Ethics and Anti-Corruption commission be banned, and then you had to be in favor or against. And it was really interesting listening to the arguments of the youth, because they used materials prepared by our experts in the anti-corruption team. And once they understood how the institution worked and how this Bribery Act interacted with the Constitution, the judiciary, and the police, their arguments were much more sound and understanding of the role they play, for example, let's say in preventing corruption in their country. And then you can look at this at a community level and at an institutional level. when you strengthen your institutions, the society benefits. But at the same time, if you're trying to prevent corruption in the police, you have to create a society that doesn't want to bribe police for things such as traffic fines. So that's one of the challenges we've faced, is bridging this gap between youth, the policies, education institutions, and accountability. And then related to how youth are affected by violence and crime in my community, I think youth are both perpetrators and victims in this instance, either by choice or due to negative environmental factors. And there's a broad spectrum of consequences that this can have, including from what we did in our last stakeholder consultation in response to COVID-19 was high school dropouts, unplanned pregnancy, vulnerability to radicalization and joining violent extremist groups, as well as joining local gangs and participating in organized crime.
Okay, apparently Akutsa has connected while we
Security
were saying
globally and
just
locally.
wait.
So yeah, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I think SDG 16 is the perfect vehicle for this. And giving ownership back to the youth on SDG 16 more specifically.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you very much, Kutsai. That was actually very interesting. Thank you for sharing this experience with us. You mentioned one thing that is very important, which is how strong our institutions can be as a role model to tackle corruption, and how youth can engage in this process of tackle corruption. That was very interesting. I'd like to, let's see if Teresa is on board, and if so, Teresa can share her perspectives as well.
Okay. Hi, Rodrigo. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
So I cannot turn on my video because every time I turn it on, the audio is turning off. So this is my
Your
insight.
picture is good enough. No worries.
Okay. So this is my insight regarding your question. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed and shown us a different world where the status quo no longer exists. The pandemic unveils both alarming challenges and remarkable opportunities for reaching the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. It was an eye opener for every nation and human being. When the World Health Organization officially declared the coronavirus outbreak last January 30, 2020 as a public health emergency international concern, everything has changed. Globally, COVID-19 has caused a huge impact on our economic and human development. It is going to be challenging for the youth to be spirited in taking actions toward the SDGs after the outbreak. As we can see, the priority of the people has changed. Poverty increased, young people lost their jobs when the pandemic began, disrupted livelihoods, and the quality of education has been sacrificed. Billions of young people are affected by the lockdowns. The pandemic have distressed the most vulnerable. The young and old, the rich and the poor, all the segment of the population has been affected. All sectors of the economy and all the regions of the world. While the crisis brought by COVID-19 threatens the progress towards achieving our goal, it will also make our action and plans to be more urgent than ever. On the other side, the pandemic also gave us the insight of what is already fundamental in the SDGs. The challenges we face cannot be dealt with isolation but with collaboration. I see the opportunity for the youth to be inspired to take actions as every nation will rise from the threat of COVID-19 in the next years. The passion for public service, active citizenship, and to raise the bar of SDG will be relevant as we approach 2030. People will be more revitalized as we all want to rise from the conquest caused by the pandemic. Last January 12, 2020, Taal volcano erupted and we are living in that area. We felt the fear, the tension brought by the calamity, and it seems like the end of the world for us. But right after the tragedy, I see the eagerness and passion of the youth to help and empower the community and to extend their hands and their efforts to make something for the people. This situation gave me a glimpse of hope in making our nation a better place to live. This COVID-19 pandemic is a challenge for everyone. a challenge to more realize on how we can improve our life in facing the new normal, and a challenge for us to reach our goals in 2030. COVID-19 seems to threaten the progress of the global goals, but this is the perfect time to contribute on an action for our nation by being a catalyst of change. Let's make youth participation and action more trending than ever. Let's put good pressure on our generation to lead up action towards the SDGs. Let's make this experience as a wake-up for call for action to make our communities to be resilient, healthier, and sustainable. I know and I believe more young people wants to make impact and be an agent of change after this pandemic. And I'm looking forward for more challengers to take up the challenge and to make this world a better place to live.
Nice, Maria. Thank you for such an inspiring declaration on the role and the power of youth to change the scenario, the environment, especially in this such a delicate moment as COVID-19. Indeed, youth has been placed in a very strategic moment to voice over and to speak out their minds and try to change the scenario and world we live in, especially in this context of COVID-19. We are 1.2 billion, and I include myself because I'm still in the age at this range. So we are 1.2 billion young men and women that can raise their voice to change the world. Now let's try to see if Ramat can join us. Ramat, can you listen to me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Rodrigo, for giving me the opportunity. I would just answer the question that you have asked previously. And in my opinion, the biggest challenge is that youth don't have enough knowledge about SDG 16, which stands for Strong Institution and Peace and Justice. Their engagement in such activities are limited, and their voice is not being heard. Youth are being considered inexperienced, so that's why their ideas are ignored. We need to raise awareness about the effectiveness of their ideas in solving problems through debates and negotiation tables. Youth must feel inclusive in all the dialogues related to the prevention of crime and violence because they are the future of the world. Regarding the second part, I would say that lack of educational and working opportunities for youth around the world motivates them to refer to the crimes and violence. Some educated people are being targeted in our community. Most of them either leave the country illegally or being assassinated by terrorist groups. I would give an example of some of the challenges that youth face here. For example, currently most of our youth population is unemployed, and due to that, most of them just refer to the crimes. Every day, for example, from 5 to 10 cases are being registered in the police department due to youth not having jobs, so they have to just find money for themselves to survive in their life, and they are just targeting people on the streets, killing them by guns and stuff, so through that way they are just trying to find money. So I would say that a good thing that we as a youth to do is that we have to organize some dialogues related to peace and crime prevention, which we currently do in Afghanistan. That way we can raise awareness about peace and strong institution and the importance of rule of law in a country. That way we can even prevent most of the illegal things happening in the country, and we can improve, raise awareness about SDG 16 and crime prevention. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
That's fantastic, Rama. Thank you very much. Indeed, what you just mentioned is crucial for us to understand the power and the necessity to put youth at the forefront. As you just mentioned, a lack of education and employment and other risk factors can indeed lead youth to get engaged into violence and therefore, and as well, to become victims of violence. As some reports have stated, 42% of the homicides of the world are between young people between 10 and 24 years old. So yes, education and employment are pivotal elements that can prevent crime and violence. And of course, this process of debating and putting young people to think about innovative solutions to promote peace and to prevent crime is crucial. I know that you've been doing this a lot in Afghanistan. I think we will have time to get through that. No worries about it, because it's good for us to learn from each other. But yes, what you just mentioned is crucial. I'd like to bring to the stage that now I'm very happy to see her on board, Lisa Martin from MUN Impact. MUN Impact is our partner in this ancillary meeting, and Lisa was facing some technical difficulties, but I'm very happy that she's with us right away. Lisa, would you mind to introduce yourself?
Well, let's see if my microphone works. Rodrigo, can you hear me? There
Perfectly.
we go. Hello, everyone. Greetings from California, and it's a real honor to be here and see kind of this culminating event here around all the work that E4J has been doing in engaging youth. And I just wanted to briefly say that working both at MUN Impact and previously as the director of Thyman Qatar, there has been a great emphasis on engaging secondary level students around the issues of rule of law. And in particular, engaging students in the area of Model United Nations, and then encouraging them to take direct action out into their communities. And for that, even in the age of COVID, there's great interest on the part of young people to talk about these issues and to find ways to problem solve for what rule of law might look for them that would be relevant within their context. But certainly, post-pandemic, there will be, additional opportunities. And I do want to just take this opportunity, if I may, to really thank the E4J team, particularly the secondary level individuals, Gilberto and others, for really working to creatively engage civil society partners to find out what works for young people, and also to thank the government of Qatar for making an investment in youth. I know this program has touched tens of thousands of young people, and it's encouraging to hear these stories to what rule of law looks like in the context of young people. So thank you very much. It's very inspiring to be here.
Thank you very much, Lisa. We are very happy to have you on board, as always. Indeed, I think that this Education for Just component on the Doha Declaration Global Program has changed the way UNODC has seen crime prevention and criminal justice, putting youth as a high priority a people-centered project that puts youth at the forefront is indeed a new way, an innovative way to think about crime prevention, especially in this context of the recovery process in post-COVID-19, which actually leads me to another interesting question that I think that we should talk about, because it is at the edge of this new format of COVID-19, which is if you think our panelists, if they think that youth are more inspired or resistant to take actions towards the SDGs after the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, and what has changed in this scenario. Maria, would you mind sharing us, maybe you and Kutsai? Maria, can you hear us? Or Kutsai?
Yeah, sure thing. I can share. Let me see.
Okay.
Anyone see?
I like that all the time Kutsai in a different setting. So he's running around the place. It's amazing. Just show off your beautiful hair.
Yeah, for International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day to all the women in the room. If it's the 8th of March for you. And to answer Rodrigo's question, I think definitely youth are more inspired than ever due to the innovations that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually accelerated. And why do I say this? Because necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that's the impact that all these lockdowns and curfews have had. And there's been a greater need for innovation now more than ever to survive for many, especially young people who are often in the most vulnerable bracket of society. From producing masks, as we saw in the Secretary General Awards, which Education for Justice was also nominated for. One of the other nominees was actually a youth-led initiative in terms of creating masks for livelihoods and increasing public safety, to creating sanitization equipment and innovations here in Kenya that the county government at least adopted in several counties that were made by young people, as well as creating opportunities for positive development through technological innovations that serve new needs that were created by the pandemic. And beyond this, we also saw a rise in gender-based violence and violence against children. And for a change, you actually saw the youth now responding in terms of child protection and looking at the impact the pandemic had. For example, here in Kenya, since schools were closed and locked down for such a long period and parents began returning to work, children were often left at home unattended and were vulnerable to a lot of abuse. So as a result, schools now became safe spaces. And some of our E4J partner schools use this opportunity to actually create safe public spaces for young people to come during the day while their parents are away, as well as teach them on crime prevention and other E4J mandate areas, and promote the Education for Justice program through theater and just small education programs. So, yeah. I think what has changed is now that youth are being given the opportunity, because COVID-19 has changed a lot of the traditional dynamics and structures we had in place. There's a lot more room for innovation and flexibility. I mean, we see this with things such as online schooling or the Rwanda's response to COVID-19 that had the Rwanda National Youth Volunteers and Community Policing being at the forefront of the COVID-19 response. And this is quite a leap for the country. If you look at the last major pandemic they faced, it was a genocide that was led by the young people. But now in this context, it's the young people who are actually protecting the society and community, especially in the framework of the SDGs regarding public health. So yeah, I think it's definitely made youth more inspired and given them the opportunity to act on this inspiration.
Nice. Thank you very much, Kutsai. Teresa, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Teresa?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, please.
I think I lost the connection or the audio during the question. Can you repeat it again? Thank you.
Yes, of course. We want to know if you think the youth are now more inspired or resistant to take actions towards the SDGs, especially after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, and if something has changed in this new scenario.
Hello?
Can you hear us, Teresa?
Hello, Rodrigo. Yeah, I can already hear you.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat once again the question? Yeah. Okay. We want to know if you think that youth are now more inspired or resistant to take actions towards the SDGs after this outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, and what might have changed?
Okay. Sorry. So, for me, the coronavirus really exposed us into a different world. Why? Because this is not the normal thing that we usually do, and it is not longer the status quo that longer exists. The pandemic gave us an alarming challenges and remarkable opportunities for us youth and as one nation. And these things that happened make us a little bit challenging for us to reach the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals. It was an eye-opener for every nation and human being. So last year, when the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak last January 30, 2020 as an international concern, everything has changed. Our life, the people's perspective and everything, it changed. And it has caused a huge impact on our economic and human development. And for me, as a youth, it is not about being pessimistic or what, but it is going to be a challenging role or task for the youth to be spirited in taking actions toward the SDG. So we see that the priority of the people has changed, the poverty increased, and most of our young people lost their jobs when the pandemic began. Some livelihood has been disrupted and the quality of education has been sacrificed, and billions of young people are affected because of this. But for me, I see the opportunity for the youth to be inspired to take actions as each every nation will rise from the shed of COVID-19 in the next years. The passion for public service and active citizenship and to rise the bar of SDG will be relevant as we approach 2030. People will be more revitalized as we want to rise from the conquest caused by the pandemic. So, as we can see that COVID-19 seems to threaten the progress on the global goals. But this is the perfect time to contribute an action for our nation, being a catalyst of change, and let's make youth participation and action more trending than ever. Let's put pressure on our generation to lead up action towards the SDGs. Let's make this experience as an wake-up call for us to make an action not just for ourselves but for our community to be resilient and healthier and sustainable. For me, this thing that is happening on us is not for it doesn't happen just for no reason, but this one is just a challenge for us to be a better person or for a better youth, and a wake up call for me and to everyone that we can still make things happen, we can still reach our goal despite that this circumstance happened in last year. So I know and I believe more young people wants to make an impact and be an agent of change after this pandemic. And I'm looking forward for more challengers to take up the challenge to make this world a better place.
Thank you, Maria. That was actually very interesting. And I see that one of the challenges that we do have at this stage naturally is to understand that seeking for our rights and for employment, for education, for all of these new challenges that we are facing in COVID-19 is also striving for the SDGs, is also trying to achieve all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They are not separate instances. We are working together and looking for these instances, these rights is also contributing to the 2030 agenda. This is interesting for us, which also leads me to what Kutsai has said. Nice for that. Thank you very, very much. Lisa, would you mind?
Yes. Let's look at our next question, which is about initiatives such as Education for Justice. So I'd like maybe Ira and then Ramat to address the following. Do you believe that initiatives such as Education for Justice can inspire youth to take action towards the rule of law? And what did you specifically learn through your engagement with E4J? Ira, would you like to start?
Hello, everyone can hear me now? Here? Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Answering the question from before, yes, I do, because Education for Justice is a great program that has the aim to prevent crime by promoting youth engagement and understanding of human rights. And this is something very, very important because this program is preparing us in innovative ways to ensure a better future for the next generation. And E4J's commitments towards outlining an interdisciplinary approach for primary, secondary, and tertiary education levels, and that has taught me how to promote the role of youth and the rule of law through my own organization. Because in my institute, we work with children, teenagers, and young people in various social conditions.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Ramat, would you like to share how you feel E4J has been instrumental in promoting rule of law, and what's been your personal experience with that?
Sure, thank you. So I personally find the E4J program very much useful because I have attended some of its training, and then I was able to share the knowledge in a wider range with my community in Afghanistan through HIDA organization. E4J taught us the importance of having the rule of law in place in a community to prevent crime and violence in a society, and using less resources to reach wider audience in a community to raise awareness about them. The most important thing about this program is having a platform of available resources for youth that they can use to increase their knowledge about the rule of law. Through this program, we were also able to organize so many model UN conferences in Afghanistan for youth to have their engagement in making resolutions for so many challenges exist due to crime and violence. So this is a platform which enable youth to raise their voice and feel inclusive in a society for bringing positive changes in the lives of so many people. So I personally believe that initiatives such as E4J will make youth to be more engaged in the community, and will make them to be aware of the things going on in the
That's great. Thank you very much, Rama.
place for everyone living. So I personally find it very useful. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ramat. And I know the work that you've done has really touched all parts of Afghanistan, and rule of law, and these conversations have occurred in places that didn't occur even 4 or 5 years ago. So hats off to you and to your network for really engaging on these issues. Rodrigo?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That was indeed very inspiring. And we know that as well as Ramat, some of our colleagues have also been working and have been dealing with so many different backgrounds and so many inspiring persons that might inspire us as well at the same time to change the world and to promote crime prevention and the rule of law. So maybe we want to hear from Kutsa as well. Kutsa, do you think you could share with us maybe some good practice or maybe inspiring story on the power of youth engagement to change people's lives in your community? Let me put just in other words, how can we actually translate the 2030 agenda into concrete action? What are your thoughts on that? And maybe Ira can support us on that.
Okay, sure thing. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. See Lisa's face and hear her voice again. It's been a while. Camera's off. So, taking from your question, Rodrigo, I think from my experiences here in Kenya and the region of Eastern Africa has been amazing. I mean, in 2019, I remember I was with Gilberto, doing a summer workshop on E4J and introducing education for justice to at secondary and tertiary level in Nairobi and Kwale County. And we worked with a couple of secondary schools, one of them notably Silver Springs. And they had about 12 students there who had never heard of the SDGs in their life, had only heard a glimpse of UNODC. They live in the school is based rather in an informal settlement here in Kibera in Kenya. And after this one-day summer workshop, introducing them to the SDGs, to education for justice, understanding the importance of promoting a culture of lawfulness under the Doha Declaration, how this international treaty works, and Kenya's responsibilities as a member state of the United Nations, they went back into their community and started acting on the SDGs and what we had taught them, and established a justice club. So what has been quite interesting about this is that 6 weeks after this training, we went to visit them at the school, and they had set up a justice club with 40 students. They had 17 SDG ambassadors, and they were all taking small community actions and initiatives on different SDGs. The young lady who was 15 years old, responsible for SDG 1, no poverty, started an initiative with a few of her friends of collecting money from the community through various creative means, and used this money to pay for the school fees and uniforms of students who either couldn't afford the fees or didn't have adequate uniform to come to school. And their rationale for this, like not guided by us, but through what they learned through E4J and understanding the SDGs, is that in order to prevent crime, they need to keep their friends and brothers and sisters in school. And I think the crux of what I'm getting to here, in terms of my experiences, has been giving ownership to these youth. We had youth from low-income schools, youth from high-income schools, and low-income families, high-income families, stable families, unstable families. But what brought them together and unified them is that they've got collective ownership and responsibility towards the SDGs, regardless of where their background is. And the actions one takes towards the SDGs are an action that all youth will benefit from. So I think that's been the best and most inspiring part about working for this. Working on SDGs with youth in Kenya is that they've taken responsibility and ownership, and all they ask for is an opportunity to act and change their community. Thanks.
Thanks, Kutsai. Indeed, I think that ownership is the main word that we could get from this experience, from this ancillary media, and what we've been looking for as young people. Ownership is pivotal to promote the 2030 agenda from the perspective of youth. Thank you very much. It was brilliant to end up your contribution to this question. And Ida, please, you have the floor.
Here I am. Rodrigo, can you please repeat the question from before?
Yes, absolutely. We would like to know if you could share with us some good practice or an inspiring story, maybe from yourself, on the power of youth engagement to change people's lives or their communities, and how do you think we can translate the 2030 agenda into concrete actions?
Now I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl. She was 14 years old when she decided to work with science projects. And after traveling around the world and receiving many awards, she saw that so many young people had not the same opportunities as she did. And she talked about this problem about the situation with her teacher. And together they have decided to create an institute to inspire youth and also to work with the social and science as a tool for transformation. And after that, many they heard about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. But so many people were telling them that Sustainable Development Goals and science had nothing to do with each other. But that girl discovered a great opportunity, a program called Youth Ambassadors, a program from United Nations Office for Drugs and Crimes. And when she was attending in this program, she realized that she was not alone, because all the youth, all the young people there, and all the ambassadors there had one common goal, and that common goal was the youth engagement. And that girl is me. I am pretty sure that my story is a great example of how we can translate the 2030 agenda into concrete actions. And here we have so many great panelists, and also this is a great example.
Well, we cannot deny that it is a great example. Thank you very much for sharing that. I joined UNODC in 2016 specifically to work with Youth Ambassadors Program. So it's very inspiring and very, we usually get somehow emotional to see how many young men and women get really inspired to change their communities with this program when they learn from each other and understand that what they were doing is promoting the 2030 agenda, is promoting quality education, is promoting the rule of law in their communities. Maybe they just didn't know the right wording to that. And yes, Ida, thank you very much for sharing your experience. We have some youth ambassadors in the audience as well, so thank you for being here. Before we move to another question, I'd like just to encourage you from the audience to put your questions or maybe your comments in the chat box, because we'll have a time to open the floor for you to put your remarks, your thoughts on that, and to build up this ancillary meeting along with us. As I said in the very beginning, this is a moment to celebrate the power of young people to change the world. So we do want to listen to you, to hear from you as well. Lisa, would you mind?
Certainly. All right. So the last question, I'm hoping you can hear me. The last question is, if you had the opportunity to give advice to the Secretary General of the United Nations regarding youth engagement, what would that advice be? And I think we'd like to hear from all of our panelists, but we'll start out with Ira, and then Kudzai, Maria Teresa, and Ramat. So Ira, if you could give advice to the Secretary General of the UN regarding youth engagement, what would you tell him?
The first one is me, right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. I think we are far from being just beneficiaries of the 2030 agenda, because we are, as young people, we are agents of change committed to the next generations. And here on this panel, we have incredible young people from different parts of the world making a difference. And I think the Secretary General of UN should instrumentalize initiatives like ours. And because here, this is my experience. Just an example. Because here in Amapá, many collectives, NGOs, and civil society organizations made by young people that work for a better and just future for Amazonian youth needed to be supported. And we have so many difficulties with infrastructure and also funding. And I think that it's very, very important that international actors as UN and international actors and organizations join forces to instrumentalize our initiatives, because we understand what happens here, and we are living and facing those challenges like poverty, xenophobia. Let me see another example: deforestation, because I'm living in Amazon, and I really want a great and just a future for the next generations, child labor. And I think that this is something very, very important. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Ira. Kudzai, it's your turn next, and I am reminded at this moment in what kind of advice you might give to the Secretary General that a couple of years ago you actually sat next to him at an MUN summit in New York at UN headquarters. And if you could turn to him right now, given 2 more years of knowledge on rule of law, what would you tell him regarding youth engagement? What would your advice be?
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I remember that moment very well. And I think my main advice would be to give opportunity for action. And now understanding the UN system better and the structures and the systems in place, many times youth are given a voice. However, this voice is without opportunity for action, which is kind of like a car with no wheels. And in order to tap into the energy, the vibrance, and the brilliance of the youth, the Secretary General needs to influence the UN as well as member states to give more opportunities for youth, because they've been given their voice so many times, and we've heard it day in and day out, which has been brilliant so far in terms of how youth advocacy has grown. But now it's time for youth action. If the youth are given more agency and ownership to act over their engagement, then the work of the United Nations and the problems member states are facing, their solutions will be accelerated. We've got an army of young people, vibrant youth with the capacity to change and innovate faster than our problems are developing. And despite this, youth are only voices. Their talents aren't being engaged. So the progress is stagnated a bit. So, and it's simple things in terms of giving opportunity for actions. I mean, I meet a lot of young people here in Kenya and Rwanda and Tanzania who want to help change their community. And sometimes it's as little as providing transport money and a meal, but they'll be engaged the whole day in terms of the things they want to see change in their community because they don't want to live in those same conditions. But oftentimes, it's these livelihood, financial constraints often linked to, poverty, income, food insecurity, health that limit them. So yeah, that would be my advice to the secretary. And if I sat next to him, I'll be like, please, when you're talking with member states, like prioritize youth, give them an opportunity to act and create structures and frameworks that makes it easy for them to support how you want to change your countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Kudzai. Incredible answer. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Maria Teresa. If you could give the Secretary General a bit of advice on youth engagement, what would you tell him? She might not be. Let's move to Ramat, and we'll see if we can get her back. Ramat, what advice would you?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So my advice would be, I would still stick to that one point, and that is the engagement of youth in high-level events. Youth should be involved in the decision-making process of some of the issues facing the world. Youth's voice must be heard and their ideas to be respected, because youths are the high population force of the world for bringing positive changes and long-lasting peace. I would explain this in two examples. Why the UN should give opportunities to youth. There were 5 Afghans in 2015 who were given an opportunity to attend a Time al Qatar conference in 2015. When they attended that conference and when they came back, they have created their own NGO, which is and was aiming to deliver Model UN or this opportunity to more youth. One of them was me, and thanks to Ms. Lisa for giving that opportunity to us. From one small opportunity, those youth have created bigger opportunities for other youth. And the second example was that we as the leadership team of HILA organization was invited to E4J workshop to Vienna, and we have learned some of the new things about SDG 16, the rule of law, peace and justice, and strong institution. And then gained from that workshop with so many other Afghan youth. And now we have been training over than 500 youth in 13 universities about the rule of law and justice. Before there wasn't any youth in this regard. So I would say that giving opportunity to youth would create a bigger impact for in the world, and I would say that the future of the world will be much brighter if youth are engaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramat. Of course, you're telling one of my favorite all-time youth empowerment stories, and I think that's a really important issue, to understand that if provided a little bit of guidance and opportunity, youth are very capable of creating that change, but there has to be some initial support there, and HILA has been a really wonderful example of that, what you can do with some of that support. Let's see if we can get Maria Teresa on to answer this. What would your advice be to the Secretary General? And I'm not sure, she may be having some audio issues. Rodrigo, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. We have actually one interesting question from the audience from Mustafa, and I'd like to address it actually to Gilberto, because I know that this specific question was at some point addressed during the youth forum that we just had 1 week ago. So maybe Gilberto will be in a good position to do that, which is, Gilberto, the 19th principle of Istanbul Declaration on Transparency in the Judicial Process foresees that programs for students should be supported by methods such as visits to courts, classroom appearances by judges, role-playing, the use of audiovisual materials. Have such an experience like that to share? So I believe you might have some experiences, and maybe Kutsai can talk a little bit about HILA, because I think that HILA through MUNs is indeed one good example of role-playing towards this process of rule of law. Gilberto, would you mind?
Yes, thank you, Rodrigo. So yes, we did hear a number of very interesting experiences in the youth forum. While we are talking about Model UN, mock trials, which are basically model trials, if we can equate it to Model UN, are actually also another very interesting experience through which I think it's really important to have people experience justice making on a very personal level. So I'm a big fan of experience or project-based learning. I think it could be really interesting in a way for people to experience not just you know, the procedural aspect of the rule of law, but and of justice, but the experience of justice making. Because in the end, when we talk about the rule of law and the different professions that work on the rule of law field, we often forget about either the people we're trying to protect or the people whose grievances we're trying to address. And this is very important for us when it comes to making people understand that all of this is really about people in the end. I would like to highlight, though, that it's not always about the people we see. For example, and one of and this came out during the youth forum that Japan hosted prior to the Congress. When we talk about rule of law education, it's not necessarily just about understanding the law and its procedures. It's also really about understanding the underlying issues about it, as well as dealing with different forms of career. The rule of law isn't just made by judges and prosecutors and the police. It's also IT experts. It can be anyone from the psychologist who cares to a victim of trafficking in persons, or a woman suffering from domestic violence, all the way to the IT expert looking into a computer that was apprehended at a crime scene. So we have basically to understand that everyone can promote the rule of law, and we need to wake up to how it surrounds us and find ways to be better engaged with it.
Nice, Gilberto. Thank you very much. Ramat, would you mind sharing your experience with HILA, talking about how this process of role-playing can support this process of promoting the rule of law? Maybe he's struggling a little bit. Kutsai, would you mind? You have also an inspiring experience with MU.
Yeah, sure.
In fact, which is interesting because you have this experience with Omun, so which was already an online MUN, so even prior to COVID-19. Maybe you can share this experience for our colleague Mustafa to send this.
Definitely. I think my experiences with Omen, with MUN Impact, are the type of experiences students need to engage in. I mean, most of the work I started doing was primarily online, and I was 18 years old, and just trying to understand like how the UN functions, how Model UN works. And then beyond that, I ended up going to law school, and we had a lot of moot courts, which is like a mock trial. Essentially, but also like youth have to be proactive beyond like what the UN provides. I also took initiative by myself to visit civil society organizations, to reach out to embassies and development agencies, and just to have a conversation or go to some activities that they were hosting and sit and listen, and maybe at the end of the session speak to one or two experts. So I think it goes both ways in that opportunities need to be structured within a system and a framework, but youth also cannot be entirely dependent, because those systems can't serve all of the youth. They can serve a good amount, but we also need to encourage youth to be proactive in this way. And from my experiences here, I've seen some really interesting experiential learning opportunities. For example, last week when the National Youth Council had their Mental Health Wellness Week, they had a youth counselor there, a youth psychologist actually, and they had created a safe space. And this youth psychologist actually has a full-time job as a psychologist at a school, but she asked for that week off so that she can provide psychosocial support to these different youth in her community, and also understand the dynamic of the problems that the youth face in her community, so that she can go back and become a better psychologist, as well as mobilize with the colleagues and professionals, because she's quite young as well, I think only 27 years old, and understand through her experiences how she can improve or address the challenges and find solutions for them. I think there are different ways to learn, there are different experiences, and we mustn't forget to also take initiative ourselves as youth.
Great. I think that Maria has connected. Maria, would you like to share your experience? Let's see. Told me that she's struggling a little bit with the audio. I think let's see. Okay, not working. We will try this again. But meanwhile, we have another question from the audience. This one comes from Isadora, which is also from Brazil, from Youth Ambassadors Program, that has raised a very interesting question to our panelists, which is giving young people an opportunity also means keeping in mind that they are at an important stage in life of developing their own personal identity. So I would like to hear from the participants what they feel when they are given the responsibility for achieving some goals, particularly SDG 16. And perhaps it is something far away or abstract, promoting the achievement of the SDGs. Would like to answer to this question? Maybe Ida? Ida, how do you feel when you are given this responsibility, considering the huge amount of responsibilities that you have in your city in promoting science?
Hello. Just let me see one more time the question from Isadora.
Yeah, Isadora wants to know, how do you feel when you are given the responsibility to achieve some of the sustainable development goals? Do you think do you think that achieving the SDGs is something too abstract or far away from your reality?
I think a long time ago, the SDGs were far away from my reality, but I had the opportunity. Now I have the opportunity to take opportunities to other young people. And with that, I believe that we are making more strong our movement. And that's why we have a lot of work to do. I am pretty sure of it. We have until 2030 to achieve all the sustainable development goals, but this is something we have to do together. But I am pretty sure it's a honor and a great responsibility, but we are not far to achieve the sustainable development goals.
Thanks, Ida, for sharing that. And Lisa, would you like to add something?
I mean, I'm thinking, and oh, here's my cat, by the way.
Yeah.
Hello, cat.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Good.
Also a big supporter of SDG 16 for felines, of course. But, you know, just generally when I'm hearing these different stories about, you know, the degree to which youth engagement is important and present, I'm struck by continually the creativity that young people can bring to this conversation. And I know this has been repeated in different ways, but I think you know, whether it's informally or through the education sector, ways to engage youth, you know, concretely and not just like in the abstract, I think is really important. And I think, you know, E4J and our speakers really, you know, highlight that importance.
Yeah, that's true. And which also brings me to the attention of one important thing from your contribution and from the other ones, which is at the very end, we know that we are doing a lot. Young people are doing a lot, but we are not doing alone. So we need to strengthen at the most the power of partnerships, civil society, the academia sector, the government, of course, working all together to facilitate and to create a better space for youth to engage in and to promote the ownership, as Kutsai has said prior to that. And maybe this is one question and one interesting point for our panelists. How do you see the importance of partnerships to promote youth engagement? Do you think that academia, civil society, and the private sector, maybe I also has an interesting case from the private sector to mention in this context of promoting SDG 16? Maybe Kutsai or Ramat, if Ramat is able to join us.
Yeah, Ramat, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think he's unable to connect the audio.
Yeah, I can go. I think partnerships for SDG 16 are vital, especially dynamic partnerships and the diversity of the partnerships available. I've been fortunate enough to work with, let's say, E4J, for example, at primary, secondary, and tertiary level. I've been able to work with private sector with the Siemens Global Project, which has been very fascinating in terms of the importance of promoting ethics, integrity, and accountability amongst young people who will be entering the workforce, especially in the private sector, and how much the private sector are willing to invest after seeing the risks and costs and impacts of corruption within their organization. And then at a civil society level has been quite interesting. I think this is the one that has been, I think, most impactful because civil society have the expertise and buy-in with the community. They've got programs ongoing and they need their capacity built on implementing programs that advance SDG 16. So that has been quite interesting to see how you can take one program that focuses on something very specific and add a dimension that builds on peace, justice, and strong institutions, looks at things such as, I often mention anti-corruption because it's the one that comes up the most, but as well as integrity, accountability, transparency, and seeing how they can integrate this into their learning. And then at a primary level, I think child protection has been a very important one that's been coming out, especially due to the consequences of COVID. Teachers and schools need assistance and technical support, improving their child protection policies, as well as gender mainstreaming. So I think there are lots of areas for partnerships, not to start new programs for civil society or for academia or private sector, but to strengthen the work they already have going on, to build the capacity and development of the human capital that they have available to them. And I think the more they learn about SDG 16, the more they learn about the work of the UNODC, the more they see the success stories, the more willing they are to be drivers of this change. And I mean, one question I often pose when I'm working with young people especially in the East Africa region, is the world looks at SDG 16, or when the world looks at Kenya, or when the world looks at your country and is looking at SDG 16 or education for justice, what do you want them to see? 10 years from now, when we've reached 2030 and you've got children and friends and nieces and nephews and colleagues, you want to say you did to ensure we got as close as possible, we achieved these goals? And what regrets don't you want to have once you reach that time, and things you don't want, things that you went through that you don't want other young people to experience?
Nice, Kutsai. Thank you very much. What you mentioned is indeed very interesting. Especially you said that we do not need to create new stuff. Things are already being created all the time, and we have to support the civil society organizations. They are working in the field to change this scenario. So what you need to do is to strengthen this partnership and work together. We're not talking about creating new stuff, but working together, trying to achieve the best results we can. And gender-based violence is a very good example on that. At least here in Brazil, we can see a plethora of examples of, for instance, how the police and the private sector can work together to prevent gender-based violence, and how youth can have an active role on that. That's very good. Unfortunately, we are approaching the end of this session. We have just 5 minutes left. I'd like to hand over to Gilberto. Gilberto would like to make some remarks from what you get from this very interesting dialogue.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. I hope that everyone can hear me okay. Before I close, I would just like to make a short reflection, because over 5 years ago, the Doha Declaration in the 13th Crime Congress was finalized, and it was the first UN document that recognized the importance of youth engagement in promoting the rule of law. After that landmark document, we had other documents such as Security Council Resolution 2250 and other resolutions, but the important thing is that it established a very important framework for us at UNODC and for the entire world to work more closely with young people in promoting the rule of law. And having gone through this journey 5 years after, I think that the stories we heard today only strengthen our belief that that vision is not only accurate, but we can actually see the results. And we heard about the results in the session today. And that is also reflected in the Kyoto Declaration, which is the outcome document of this 14th Congress on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice. What I would like to point out, after having listened to the discussions today, is that there is no reason for us, for the UN, or for any, for governments, civil society organizations, not to involve youth. Everyone can gain from this. And hopefully these mandates that began 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, can continue to be implemented because we can see tangible results. We need to focus on rule of law issues for concrete things. We need to focus on empowerment education, and with that we'll see change. And I think that this is what we have been focusing on today. And I would very much like to thank you all for being here with us today. Hopefully you were a little bit inspired. I'm always very inspired when I participate in these sessions, because they are just a further testament to the fact that we can achieve many great things through different types of partnerships. As I talked about participation before, which is not only a goal in itself, but a means through which to achieve the other goals. The same applies for Goal 16 as a whole, as well as 7 partnerships. And partnerships is not only about different sectors of society or different types of entities, such as the private sector, or it's also about young people. So I hope that you can take this from today's event, and we are very happy that you could participate with us today. I am particularly grateful for Rodrigo's moderation. It is now just before 3:30 a.m. in Brazil, where he's located. It is still, for example, Sunday in California, where Lisa is. So we are always happy to work with you guys, no matter where you are, and I'm very happy to have been a part of this panel. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us despite the technological difficulties. I do apologize to everyone for some of the glitches that we have been having, but I hope that you can still make the most out of this Congress experience. Thank you very much, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks, Roberto. Thank you very much. Lisa, would you mind sharing your final remarks?
Yes, and I also just wanted to, again, thank everyone for being here. It's always wonderful to hear inspiring stories and to be reminded of the importance of the work that we're all doing. Finding real, true partners, collaborative partners, is a vital part of this work, and E4J has certainly been one of those partners. So I hope that the next 5 years will see more growth and more youth initiatives. And to everyone who's listening to this, keep building and keep fighting for a world that is full of rule of law for all.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I can also thank you, and that's all I can do. We've been working since 2016 through this the Doha Declaration to promote this youth engagement and to strengthen youth to become agents of change in their communities. And being here and see so many testimonials and these contributions to this dialogue is indeed very inspiring for us as citizens, as UN staff, as global individuals, global citizens. And the only thing I can do is to thank you for the work you've been doing in your communities to promote a safer and more sustainable society. Thank you, Ida. Thank you, Kutsai. Thank you, Ramat. Thank you, Maria. And also thank you, Gilberto. Thank you, Lisa. And also our teams, part of our team, Pamela and Sarah as well, that have been supporting us in this conference. And for all of you that are here in the audience, contributing and very interested to learn more about the power of youth. So thank you very much, and we do hope to see you very soon. Keep inspiring and changing together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rodrigo, and everyone else. Have a great day.